Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Gene Harrell, and I welcome you to this production of Seven, a documentary play. When my dear friend, the director, Dina Culp, asked me to introduce the play, I was taken aback. This is a play about women. They're international. They're from all over the world. Why would you ask me to do this? And she said, think about it. And it didn't take long for us to cross the bridge to this is about all of us. This play is about all of us. So I am deeply honored to be asked to do this. An amazing thing for me in reading and learning and Googling about Seven is that it was written verbatim from interviews with these women activists from all over the world, meant to be read without limits to race, nationality, language, and even gender. It has been presented in over 32 countries in 27 different languages by both men and women, dignitaries, ministers of governments, artists, activist groups, theater groups, and even by NATO generals. So you see, it's not about who tells these stories. It's the stories that sell themselves that matter. These women you are privileged to hear and see on stage here in Santa Fe tonight give voice to these remarkable stories. So thank you for being here. We want to remind you that all the proceeds from all these performances will be going to Esperanza, our Santa Fe Women's Shelter. So now, unlike last night when somebody did not do this, would you find the little airplane, please, as I find mine, and just make sure, because we got to hear it last night, so hopefully that won't happen tonight. Thank you for silencing your phones now. Okay, and by the way, there'll be no intermission in tonight's performance. And we have tonight's part of Mu Soku of Cambodia will be represented by Anne Roylance. So thank you again for joining us tonight, and welcome to Seven.
Hafsat Abiola, Nigeria.
Mu Soku, Cambodia.
Annabella De Leon, Guatemala.
Inez McCormick, Northern Ireland.
Farida Azizi, Afghanistan.
Marina Kishmakova Parker, Russia.
Mukta Mai, Pakistan.
So, now we're sitting round together in North Belfast in a small dark room in a community hall, sewage coming up the sink, and all these women, they survive the worst, and we're reading the Declaration of Human Rights out loud till we get to the word inalienable, and it's hard to pronounce. So they start laughing and think I said alien, and maybe I'm talking about outer space. And I say it's hard to spell, too. But what does it mean, anyhow, one woman asks me. Well, all these rights that we're reading, they're part of every human being. What do we have to do to get them? Well, they're yours, I tell them. She looks at me amazed. Well, that's the best fucking kept secret in the whole world's all I can say.
On the days I give audience, Monday and Friday, my God, you can't enter my office. A line, groups of 20, 40 people are coming to talk to me. They come from all over the Republic. Go on, tell me your problem.
Necesito la medicina para mi madre que es muy vieja.
Mary, please get me Director General of Hospital. Mrs. Mosada needs medicine for her mother and they don't give her any. I have a phone now with no wire. El director del hospital, Annabella de Leon, how are you? Fine? Okay. Everyone takes my calls because they know I am not playing. Here is Mrs. Posada. You didn't give her medicine for her mother. She is presenting to me this moment the prescription. I need you to solve this problem, okay? You're going to send me the medicine? No. She is going to go there now, and you will give her the medicine, and then she is going to call me again when she has the medicine, okay? Okay. Thank you very much, because if you don't give her the medicine, I'm going to call you to the plenary, okay? Okay, bye-bye. Your problem is solved. Call me when you have the medicine. Okay, who's next? What happened?
In the night wind, when I think of home, I think of mountain shadows as I hide in the borders of Afghanistan to walk so many times at night. It is the faces of the women that will always move me, guide my footsteps through the landmines. I see a woman giving birth all by herself because under Taliban, male doctors are forbidden to treat women and women cannot be trained as doctors. I see her face as she dies in front of my eyes, and I cannot stay calm. What can I do? The only way to bring basic health care to these women is to walk, sometimes at night to regions so remote. So I smuggle myself and my 2 small sons under my burqa. The burqa can be a good thing to disguise myself. When I feel the mujahideen watching me across the mountains, I find they are not all against the women. Sometimes they tell us where the landmines are, or not to go a certain way. There might be thieves.
Crisis Center for Women, how may I help you?
I heard you on the radio.
You did?
I heard you on the radio. You were telling my story.
Yes.
My husband is beating me. He's been beating me for 26 years.
Where are you?
I'm in bed with a broken back from him beating me.
Tell me your address.
I heard your voice. You sounded like someone I could trust.
Now tell me how to get to you so I can send help.
Girl, my husband is very powerful. He is in one of the government agencies.
I will come and bring the police.
You know, girl, you don't understand. If you call someone, he will find out.
No, tell me.
Before you get to me, I will be dead.
She calls for about a month, and then she stops calling. She was one of the ones I could not save.
Camus are malicious spirits, and the Prelun is the soul. All these years, I did not know that in our culture, in Cambodia, we are supposed to have 19 souls. Every part of our body has a soul, hair, feet. I ask victims of trafficking, when did you lose the soul? They say their souls left when the trafficker took them away from their families. That their souls are still in the rice field. When you are raped you lose your prelude. Someone takes it away. I've been working with trafficked women since I became Minister of Women's Affairs in 1998. Until that time, only men held that position. The first thing I did was challenge an old Cambodian proverb. A man is gold, a woman is just a white piece of cloth. Think of it. If you drop a piece of gold in the mud, you can clean it. It will be shinier than before. But if a piece of cloth is stained, it is ruined. If you've lost your virginity, you cannot be a piece of white cloth again. Each year, more than 30,000 Cambodian children are forced into prostitution. Girls as young as 11 are tricked, promised jobs to help their poor families, then taken away to become sex workers. I'm working with one of them now, a girl called Mooney.
How did I come to speak out? Well, I was living in the US, and you know how American society is. I mean, very nice people, but they don't know a lot about any other place, even in America, or Canada, their nearest neighbor. So what is the chance that they're going to know about Nigeria and care? It was 1995, and I was at Harvard in my second year. I just finished when I see a group of students petitioning. And I know it'll be something absolutely ridiculous, like the right of students to walk barefoot on campus on Sundays. And I try to avoid them, but they are persistent. And they stop me, only because I am black. They say to me, "We have a petition. The elected president of Nigeria is in jail, and we are gathering signatures." And I say to them, "Do you realize you are gathering signatures for my father?" And of course they do not. But they get very excited. And they ask me to come speak to their group on campus about the situation in Nigeria. Oh, I thought I'd be speaking to a vacuum, that nobody would hear me, but they listened and they cared, and that is how I began to find my voice.
My father took me away from school at 16 and put me to work as a clerk in his one-man printing business. It was very constricting. I wanted to go to university, and I knew my family wouldn't let me, so I left home. I got a bedsit and applied for a lowly civil servant position. At the interview, I'm asked,
What do you think of homosexuals?
"What?"
What would you do if your brother married a black woman?
Offensive questions that are not the real question, which is, what do you think of Catholics? I'm from a unionist Protestant background. I wouldn't have known a Catholic until I was 18. I remember a conversation in the office about a Catholic who'd gone for a promotion, and how you couldn't have that because Catholics couldn't be trusted. And that's when I realized the conversation could only take place because there aren't any Catholics in the office. Northern Ireland was a profoundly unjust place to live. Well, it still is. It's a very cold house for the poor. In the north, if you challenge injustice and you're not on the side of the status quo, well, then you have to be on the other side. A very rigid power system. I remember a relative of mine saying,
Inez, you've no right to upset us like this.
"Well, and you've no right to live in a way that upsets others."
Here is a chart I made up. In 1954, I was born. You see, I call that darkness. That is followed by sorrow, my childhood, then basic knowledge when I learned everything, and then enthusiasm and courage and no playing. That is my school days. I won excellent grades, which helped me to win a scholarship to study law. Discrimination is that period of my going to law school. My scholarship was to a private university. When I go there, my classmates say to me, "We will discriminate to you because we have money and you are poor people." They say, "You must go to public university. You are not in our circle." I tell them, just because you say to me, I must not go here? No, forget it, bye-bye. I don't know what it is to be silent. I am all the time defending my rights. I say to them, you do not have the same between the ears, because if you discriminate me for being poor and being woman, I am going to discriminate to you for being stupids.
We go through the calling of the soul ceremony now for Moni. She has just been rescued from a brothel. I hold a ladle to call her souls into a small fishing basket. You have to call 19 times.
Oh, precious Prelum, what you see today to be the riverbank is actually total darkness. You must beware of all the trees which harbor evil spirits in disguise.
We wrap her wrist with 19 cotton strings for each of her souls.
I am tying strings around your wrist and around mine to unite you with your relatives, old and young, grandmothers and grandfathers. May each string bring back your soul, and may your mind and body be whole.
The entire time, she says almost nothing. She is just a kid, a beautiful child, that smile and all. But she is lost. You can see it just by looking at her. You know that she is soulless. It is a form of emptiness, depression. When you ask about that moment, that painful moment when she is penetrated, forced, she just keeps saying,
I lost my soul. He took away my soul.
I am finishing my call, O 19 souls, come back all together now.
Oh yes, I think it matters. The nature of your soul. I think of my soul as light-filled. Not that I'm some kind of psychic person, but I believe there's much more light than darkness. It matters to me that I shouldn't be vindictive or harbor ill will for other people. When you experience brutal events, you can start to feel very hostile and bitter. And that's a lot of dark energy I don't want.
At my son's school, Peter was 7, first grade. We mothers would let the kids go in, and then we would stand around and talk about school, other things. I was assigned to the Institute for Socioeconomic Studies of the Population at the time, and one morning I am talking to 2 other women, a homemaker and the other is a computer programmer. I say, you know, I am doing a survey at the Institute, and we are getting these letters coming in, women talking about domestic violence.
Domestic violence?
What do you mean?
When I was growing up in the Soviet Union, no one talked about such things. We did not even have words for it. So I explained that it is when husbands are controlling, jealous, when they put you down and won't let you speak to other women, your family, isolating you, and the emotional abuse, the psychological pressure slowly comes to physical abuse, and sometimes not so slowly. After I explained to them, both of them say they are being abused by their husbands. One for 6 years, one for 10. I feel something sinking inside me. Later, the one who is a homemaker calls me crying.
My husband was putting on a suit and a button came off and he picked up his shoe and slammed me in the face in front of the children.
Her face is bruised, swollen for a week. Why don't you just leave him?
You know? Where would I go?
So, I start calling social services. I call different organizations and I ask, who can help a woman in a situation like this? And everywhere the answer is, no one, it is a private matter. Well, I am not ready to accept that, so I get an office and a phone, and I set up the domestic violence hotline. Actually, I call it a trust line, because all the women could do is trust.
It is so hard. I am all the time declaiming, denouncing, but they don't investigate anything. Impunity is the queen of Guatemala. When the law has no consequences, then everyone thinks, I can do whatever I want. I can steal, I can murder, I can beat up my wife. The domestic violence is going to be a crime very soon because we are pushing to create these laws. But we need the judges to comply because we need to stop the violence against women. This year, 2,500 women have been murdered. They were born, they were good, and now they are dead.
In Russia, 14,000 women every year are killed by their husbands, one woman every hour. For a long time, it is just me alone on the phone, counseling people, trying to help them find legal aid. And I can't do what a normal hotline could do. I am the only person doing this in all of Russia.
If there is no clinic, no hospital, no transportation, there is nothing. So we need to train the women on the vaccination, sanitation, nutrition. We make a basic midwife toolkit with nail cutters, soap for washing their hands, gloves, a plastic sheet for giving birth, scissors to cut the umbilical cord, things for measuring the fever. Even we coordinate with the Taliban. I always tell them openly, what is this project? How it helps the women, the budget, impact, and the Taliban say, well, okay, we will let you have your project if you will teach the women the Quranic verses about the prayers. And we want to see your materials to be sure there is nothing against Islam. We don't want Western ideas to be enforced. So we say, this is fine. So they accept us. We place materials inside the midwife toolkits, how to pray, how to clean the houses, how they can respect their elders, how to make their husbands happy, how they can prepare the food. The women have to know these things.
The calling of the souls ceremony. I do it because, it's part of my culture, but do I really believe in it? I don't think so. I love my culture, my tradition, but it tells you that if you've lost your soul, you deserve it. If you have been tortured, raped, or battered, it's your karma. So if you believe in this, you may as well say that's it. That's the end of my life. The most painful part for me is when the children say, "Give me my soul back." I translate that into a fight for justice. I say, help Moni win her case against the trafficker. That will be justice, and she does win. The trafficker and the brothel owner are found guilty and go to jail. But the man who first raped her has never been found. So, in that sense, Moni's soul can never return to her. These victims will be whole again only when they feel free from being raped again and sold again, that the man next door won't come back and harm them. But if the man lives close, we gave Moni everything. And she came and lived with us, but she couldn't. She ran away, cut herself totally off from her family, and now she's in some other brothel somewhere.
In my society, the name they give you at birth shows how much they value you. My name, Hafsat, means the treasured one. My dad called all his daughters Supergirls. But I had big self-esteem issues. And my mom, she was a legendary beauty. She was one of 4 wives, and there were 19 children. There are many wonderful elements of growing up in a polygamous family. You have ready-made friends, but it is inevitable that you get compared. My father, everyone knew how brilliant he was. Very genius. And then there's my sister, Io. She was walking in his footsteps. Then there's me, average. I think once I came out of Nigeria, I realized that it was okay to be different. I used that time away to really build my own sense of who Hafsat is.
My great aunt had the honor of naming all the children in my family. She called me Mukhtar, which means powerful or self-respecting. And that always was strange for me because I am very thin, and in my culture, a thin person is considered weak. My village is Mirwala, in the southern part of Pakistan, one of the poorest areas of the Punjab. We are from the Gujars, a peasant tribe of low caste. Like other girls, I climbed trees and played with dolls, but all daughters must learn special jobs so they will be useful in the family. I was taught to do embroidery. People brought fabric to me, and I would design and sew their shirts and trousers. I also grew flowers and plants, and that is something I still love to do. Last year, I planted jasmine and some fruit trees too, but the goats came. They ate the mangoes and the lemon trees, and so I replanted them. But the goats came again and again. They did not know that I am just as stubborn as they are. Whatever they do, I am going to keep up with my plantings. And someday, I think the goats will just give up and my trees will have the victory. My village had no school, and no one in my family could read or write. I learned the things my mother learned, and her mother before her, how to do housework or fetch water from the pump, make chapatis, hang clothing from the palm trees. I did not have any idea that in other places, girls were being educated. I did not know that I had been taught nothing of the world. No, I was taught something. I was taught silence. I was taught fear. I was taught to hide my face, bow my head, to submit, to agree, to obey my parents and stay away from boys. That is all I knew. But time caught up with me and it gave me a lesson.
The war in Vietnam. We thought it would never come to Cambodia. We were listening to the Beatles. And then it came. My mother and father put me on a plane to France. I left the family. I was 18, and I was so desperate. Like, this river is bending, but which rock do I hang on to? There was no rock, and it was going very fast. I never went back. From an innocent teenager to a refugee, hopeless and an orphan.
If you start from 1980 in Afghanistan, where I was born, I was there until the age of 9. We had everything, but because my father was a doctor, we were in danger. He tried to help too many women and children crowding into our house under Russian rocket fire until the day there came a hole into our living room. We had to flee Kabul and flee the Russians and then flee the Taliban in 1993. We panicked by the thousand that time, pushing to escape. No transportation. All the roads were closed or blown up. We saw some people drenched with blood, not from their own wounds, but from walking over the bodies of the dead. We could only crouch down in the sewers until there was ceasefire. How could I know my family would live in a Pakistani refugee camp for 15 years, the best years of my youth?
My husband and I were on our first vacation in years in Finland. We went mountain skiing, and he's tired. He says, "I'll go and take a nap." Suddenly I realized his nap is getting too long. When I find him, he is still alive, but in the emergency room, they are not able to save him. Heart attack. He is 37. I am 33. He was the only one understanding and supporting my mission. I am alone. I wonder, do I have the strength to do this work?
My mother, my brother and me lived in a small dark room. From a little window, I could look out and see mi madre cooking. I still remember. I was very young, watching her stooped over the pot, cooking a meal for us. Each night we eat black beans, frijoles with tortillas. I saw a woman go over to our little outdoor kitchen and throw dirt in the pot my mother was stirring. Our family's food for the day, damaged, our only meal, and my mother began to sob. I was young, but I knew I wanted to get out of that world. A world where the women, being so angry and hopeless, they throw dirt in your food. Or like my mother, all the time in silence, praying and crying. It is this beginning of my life that is responsible for my way of being.
The city of Derry is on this hill, surrounded by walls, with cannons overlooking the town square. At the bottom of the hill was this collection of streets known as the Bogside. Well, long ago it would have been for very poor people, Catholics coming in from rural areas, the poorest of the poor, families living in one room with just damp coming down from the walls. I remember being told, looking down at the Bogside from the hill of Magee,
You don't go down there.
and now I'm married to a Catholic from down there. It was the summer of '68 when I met him. I went to London. I walk into this bar, and there is this guy with a Derry accent selling drinks, and I buy a drink. And I'm still married to him. He was much more politically aware. Listening to him talk about the North, I began to glimpse this other, darker world. We hitched to Portugal. On the TV at the youth hostel, we saw the first huge civil rights demonstration in Derry. I saw my husband's face go white. People were being beaten off the streets. We hitched straight back home. I was in the same physical landscape, but I'd crossed over to another landscape indeed.
Some men of the Mistoi tribe come to our home and say that my 12-year-old brother, Shakur, has committed zina with a girl from their clan and will go to jail. This crime that they put on Shakur means rape or sex before marriage, and is punishable by death. My family is sure that the accusation is false, and later we find out that we are right. My little brother is the one who has been raped, and by the same men who are placing blame on him. But what can we do? The Mistoi are a higher caste than we are. They are landowners, so whatever they say is law. The men of our Jurga, the village council, meet to discuss the situation and decide that I, Mukhtar, must go and ask forgiveness from my brother. If this will free him, I am happy to do it. It is twilight when I begin walking towards the farm of the Mistoi, holding my prayer book to my breast. My father and uncle go with me. We enter the compound with its high walls. The clan chief, Faiz Muhammad, and 4 other men are there, standing there with rifles, and behind them there are many more men of their tribe. I lay down my shawl as a sign of submission. Bismillah, Irrahman, Irrahim, Alhamdulillah, Rabbi Alameen, Rahman, Irrahim, Maliki Yawmadin, Iyaka na'budu, Iyaka nasta'in. The compassionate King of the Day of Reckoning, thee only do we worship, and thee only do we ask help. Show us the straight way, and lead us out to those whom you have favor with, and lead us away from those whom you have led astray. Amen. I look at Faiz and say, if my brother has offended you, I beg pardon for his action and beseech you to set him free. Faiz glares at me with wild eyes, and now I understand. He will not forgive our family. He wants only to humiliate someone, and as always, it will be a woman. But never did I imagine what would happen next.
Well, I had gotten a call early that morning that something had happened in Nigeria. and I thought it had to do with my dad. My older brother was in DC, so we all congregated at his home waiting for word. Then I got a call from my sister, Ayo.
Have you heard anything?
No.
Your mother was in an accident.
Now, this is my mother, her stepmother, but I wasn't worried because I knew my mom was very strong. I was waiting for word about the extent of injuries and what they wanted us to do. And then Ayo called me again later.
Have you heard anything?
No.
Hamzat, your mother is dead.
Four men pull me by my hair and arms and drag me into a windowless room, a stable with a dirt floor. The only animals there are those brutes, those men. I scream for them to release me, but one man shows me his gun and the others hold me down. And for more than 1 hour, I was raped by those 4 men of the Mistort. Men with shotguns forced my father and uncle to wait outside. I can still see them standing there near the door, helplessly, while the men take turns, one after the other. Day and night, I tell you, every girl walks in terror of what happened to me. By the time we are 8, we know that a man can grab us whenever he wants, take us to some dark place, break into our bodies, and ruin our lives, destroy our childhoods and our futures. Inside our homes, we feel safe. But when we go out, the fear takes hold of us night and day and night. It is like a vulture flying just above our heads as we work or walk or play. And when it happens, it is beyond any nightmare.
My mother was not in an accident. She had been assassinated. She was driving to a meeting with the Canadian ambassador because of the work of enrolling our allies for the democratic movement. This was 96. My father was still in jail. And my mom had become the voice of the movement. She was driving in the streets when the car that was tailing her was with soldiers. They overtook her. They shot her driver, then shot her in the head. But I don't know that she knew what was happening because it all happened so fast. You know, she probably would have been thinking that it was a flat tire or something. And then they shot her.
When they have finished with me, I am thrown outside. My clothes are torn and I am nearly naked. I lie on the ground, alone, with my shame. My uncle and father help me to my feet and walk home with me, past hundreds of townspeople. No one says a word to me as I go by. They all lower their eyes or stare at me in disgust. Now, I am unclean and dishonored in the eyes of the tribal elders, my family, and the villagers. In that 1 hour in the stable, my life has been destroyed.
On the final day of the 90-mile Burn Tallet March, just outside Derry on a narrow road. There's an ambush. 100 men come down the hill on the right-hand side holding clubs and with nails in them, and others come up from the riverside on the left, and the police block us from the front and back to allow them to come at us. People start running and screaming, and now I'm in front, and all you can do is walk. And then, just as we come onto Derry, in a small, narrow street, stones are lobbed down on us, and the police block the street, so we have nowhere to run. And I try to get into the doorway of a shop, and of course it's locked, and I'm screaming as blood runs down my face. But the shop assistants are standing inside, and they're laughing. And they're people from my background, I mean, you have to dehumanize any group of people to demean them that way. Now I experience from the inside this paralyzing sense of powerlessness that comes from humiliation. I'm hit by a couple of men wielding heavy branches like clubs, and when I go home, my neck and shoulders are badly bruised. My family is very distressed. But then comes the classic remark.
If you hadn't been there, it wouldn't have happened.
I was suddenly an outsider in my family. I'd crossed a line. That march changed the shape of the rest of my life.
After 9 years of exile, I took the first chance to return to Asia in 1981 with the International Rescue Committee to work in the Thai Cambodia camps. With my team, I traveled into the jungles to bring supplies of food and clothing. We reached a refugee camp on top of the mountain, still run by the Khmer Rouge. The refugees are told to come outside the camp walls to collect the supplies we brought them. They are not allowed to speak. They march out in line, dressed in the black pajamas the Khmer Rouge insist they wear. Just seeing the Khmer Rouge soldiers in their uniforms brings back the war. My parents, friends, all gone. I never said goodbye. It's hard for me to keep quiet. I want to free these refugees. I now have a raging struggle to continue working in Cambodia, helping its people recover. I know, from this moment on, my life is going to change.
For the next few days, I lock myself in my room. My mother brings me food, but no one speaks to me about what has happened, and I speak to no one. In my country, women do not talk about such degrading things with others. I knew about 3 other rapes that had taken place before mine. One woman reported it to the police, but they dismissed her case. Another stayed home and never mentioned it again. And the 3rd woman killed herself. She swallowed a bottle of pesticide and died right then. Is that what I'm supposed to do? In Pakistan, staying alive is more cowardly and more shameful than the rape itself. But in my heart, I do not believe that anyone in my family really wants me to die, especially my mother. I can see it in her eyes. I can feel it in her touch. My pain is hers, but she suffers with me and wants me to go on living. commit suicide. What will I do with my life?
All the time in the refugee camp, I dream of going to school, to learn to be a doctor like my father. But we couldn't go outside the tent, or they might kidnap us or sell us to the warlords. We saw the windows of the refugee school shot out and shut down. Finally, I am so happy when I hold my first book in a refugee school. It is coming to me from the University of Nebraska.
Five bullets times 5 bombs is equal to 25 weapons. The orange color is the rocket, and the blue color is the Stinger. The green is the Kalashnikovs.
Answer these questions in your notebooks. If one mujahideen kills 4 Russians, how many mujahideen wake up, pray, and then go fight and kill the Russians? Draw an airplane bombing on your house.
Here, you see, the house is burning, the man is hurt, and the children fearful from the fire.
Many $million spent to bring the message of violence into refugee schools. There is not a lesson of which is a mother, which is a brother. My first school is the propaganda to become a warrior.
We got over 600 million from the West to repair the country. But no matter how much you bring, you cannot restore the soul. The war is never over. It's like you put acid on a person. The scars will always be there. You can build roads, you can demine rice fields, but you cannot reconstruct the face. How can you put back together a family that has been destroyed?
If we start from scratch, the younger generation, and I say education, yes. You can build a building very easy, but it is better first to build the minds and then the building, so that the building should be safe in the mines.
When I started my work and would speak to the police, they would say, "Oh, come on. Women do not feel loved unless they're beaten. He beats you, therefore he loves you." I was astonished. It is a saying from the 16th century, from the Domostroy household rules, written rules about how a household should be run.
The man is master of a house.
Everybody else is his servant.
A man should punish his wife to make her more obedient.
Don't beat her on the face, because you won't be able to show her in public.
Don't beat her on the stomach if she's pregnant.
It's better to use the whip rather than a stick, because it will be more painful, so she will learn her lesson better.
After beating her, show how much you love her so she will understand the lesson deeper and appreciate you more.
He beats you, therefore he loves you. Since the 16th century, it has been an excuse.
My father left our little room when I was only 3, but I loved him with all my heart. He was very emotional, like me, a handsome man, brave and strong-looking. But there was always trouble in his life, drinking and women. When I was 12 years, my father came to our house and said, "I have a new woman," he tells my mother. "I am going to introduce you to her, But don't say you are my wife, only you are the mother of my 2 children. When he brings the woman to our home, mi madre says, I am only the mother of his children. We don't have any relations. I was very angry. You are both going to be punished for this because you are not saying the truth. And to my loving mother, you don't have dignity as a woman.
One idea keeps pushing away all the others. Maybe I can help the women of my country. Yes, that could be possible. So this is how I am thinking when I learn that my rape is not just some evil plot of the Mistoi, but it was ordered by the tribal elders, the very men who are supposed to deliver justice and protect all women as if they were their daughters. Before my rape, girls were kidnapped off the streets or a man would force sex on a woman. But this time, the entire council had decided that I should be gang raped. They call it an honor revenge. Nowhere does the Quran say that Islam supports violence against women. Nowhere. This is why the Imam says to the congregation at the Friday sermon,
The village council has sinned greatly in ordering this violation of Islamic law. The criminals responsible for the rape must be brought to justice. Mukhtar Mai and her family should go to the police and file charges immediately.
I had never heard of the Constitution or realized that I was a citizen of Pakistan. And that citizens, even if they are women, have legal rights. In my whole life, I had never talked to a lawyer or a judge or a policeman. But this Mukhtar, she is not the same woman who kneeled down to the Mistoi. Now, whatever happens to me, I am going to speak out.
Which newspaper did you say?
The New York Times, what is your reaction?
Excuse me, to what?
You don't know?
No. What is it?
Your father is dead.
No, you are mistaken. But she wasn't mistaken. My father was dead. He had been in solitary confinement for 4 years since the election. He was supposed to be released within days. He died in a meeting with the U.S. State Department and Nigerian government officials, probably poisoned. His presidential campaign had been called Hope 93, Farewell to Poverty. Our country had been one of the poorest in the world because of the corruption of our leaders. And for the first time in Nigeria's history, the people had voted for the man, for the promise. But the military government didn't want to leave. They offered money, they offered access to oil fields, but they could not find a price that my father was willing to accept. He would not betray his democratic mandate from the Nigerian people. So they took his life, the same as with my mom.
8 days after the rape, I traveled to the police office in Jatoi, many miles away, with my father and brothers. The policeman is sitting at his desk when I enter. He does not even lift his head to look at me.
Yes? What do you come to tell me? Your complaint?
Well, I was Faiz Muhammad of the Mistoi. He ordered 4 men to rape me.
No, this cannot be your report. You must not say you've been raped. We know what happened. You must sign here.
But I don't know what it says.
We know, sign it, I said.
I do not know how to sign my name.
Use your thumbprint like all the other women.
That is when I understand why we must have education. If you are educated, you can fight for your rights. But when you are illiterate, how can you stop the injustice that comes down on you?
We really don't know what happened. And maybe we'll never know. And to be honest with you, it's not so important how they died. The most important thing is how they lived. I am taking up their legacy. I have named my organization after my mom, Kudarat. In Arabic, it means power. And I am working to show young women that they can have power and how to reclaim it.
Now that I live again in Phnom Penh, my childhood memories come flooding back. This is where I learned how to bike. That is where I learned how to swim. When rain came down in buckets, flooding the streets, my brother Song Li and I caught fish to put into huge jars on our third-floor balcony. I used to accompany my mother to Salmai, the large yellow central market where the stalls spilled out into the open air. I loved to wander through the long rows, staring at the huge piles of fish, fruit, and vegetables. I spent a lot of time in the kitchen helping my mother cook. At night on the radio, we listened to the opera. The music of Ramayana plays for hours.
My brother used to play in a big hole like a trench that surrounded the sauna where we lived. He didn't like school. I was all the time thinking, I need to study. I need to prepare. I tell my mother, one day I will have la girecilla, a swivel chair, and many people under my command. My mother laughs and says, está bien para soñar. It's okay for you to dream. Now, I have been elected 3 times, and I am sitting in my swivel chair.
My father was a military pilot. My mother was a nurse. I grew up mostly in the northern part of Russia, in the polar area of Murmansk. In winters, I would go skiing with my friends. Oh, for us to go 3-5 kilometers in the wild forest, that was normal. Really, we were not afraid of anything. In the summer, I would visit my grandparents who lived on the Black Sea. And for me, swimming in a storm, jumping under big waves, swimming as far out as I could where you could almost not see the shore, that was normal. I was the first grandchild, the first niece, the first everything for everybody, so I got a lot of attention, and I loved it. When you grow up, when you have a happy childhood, you think that is normal. You don't realize, that there is a different world out there.
When I walk along the border of Afghanistan, I see so many red and pink flowers, both sides of the road. And I think, oh yes, my country is so beautiful. And then I see they are the poppies for the opium. I see the women in the poppy fields side by side with the men, cutting the cane until the milk comes through, and the opium blows through their tresses, hair, mouth, until they are addicted. In the north, The mothers give small pieces of the opium to the children so they can weave carpets for 10 hours a day. That's how the children start their own addiction. So we try to give them an awareness of the consequences, how it can destroy them.
I am brought before a judge. He sees how tired I am and brings me a glass of water. Then he asks me to describe every detail of what happened in the stable. I tell him things that I have not told my own mother. Before I leave the courtroom, he tells me to hold fast to my courage. And the next morning, when I wake up, there is such a racket outside my house. Reporters call out to me, women's groups, civil rights groups from all over the world. The Pakistan Human Rights Commission has demanded a full investigation, and the press is supporting my lawsuit. But I hear that my rapists are laughing at the whole thing. They think it's ridiculous. A poor peasant woman trying to fight the influences of the powerful Mastoy.
In Guatemala, corruption is in the police department, the ministry, the judicial branch, even the Supreme Court. In 2001, Vice Presidente Reyes used the national printing press to print false identity papers for his supporters so they could vote more than one time. When the man who operated the printing press spoke out, his wife and daughter were attacked. When a key witness agreed to testify against him, he was shot dead. And when I denounced him, the Organization of American States mandated the government to provide protection for me. Every day, 4 bodyguards come to my house in the morning, and they are there with me until the night.
Ballymurphy. It was and is one of the most deprived housing estates in West Belfast. I was placed in a small welfare office there in the early 70s, deliberately sending me and my 2 friends, 3 barely trained young hippie Protestant women, to an empty flat in the neighbourhood of a shooting war between the IRA and the British Army, well, clearly designed to give them an excuse to close the office. Well, we didn't know that. We knew nothing. We were known as the Welfaries. All we did was, somebody comes in, a woman who has 2 disabled kids and she's pregnant and her husband has lost his job and I'm about to counsel her on her inadequacies, Well, that's why we write lots of vouchers for food and other things. So the cost of this office suddenly goes from 0 zoom. And we're suddenly ordered to be transferred. Our office is too dangerous. We just keep on going to work. And someone says I better join the union, so I do. And I'm elected shop steward of the Welfaries. Just the 3 of us. And then I'm told to recruit more union members. And nobody's bothered with the hospital cleaning union. And the school meal workers. Women who'd go stand in front of tanks or shake down the bars of a prison to rescue their sons, but they won't stand up to a boss because they feel powerless, So I keep organizing, and they keep joining the union. And when they go on strike, all decent people close their shops and join the huge picket lines.
What is the reason you want to fire these airport workers? Tell me in front of them.
Estamos construyendo el aeropuerto. No les necesitamos.
They have worked in the airport for 30 years. And you're going to fire them? No, you are not. They have families. They have children. They need their work.
You want to cut the hospital cleaning budget? Why?
It is essential to good finance.
Oh, are your pensions and your benefits going to be cut as well? Because 100 of you would cost as much as 10,000 of the women. No, you must work out how these people can keep their jobs. So much of my work comes from these women cleaners. I mean, the idea of it. To enable people on the powerless end, the bottom of the heap, the invisible, to be part of the making of change. Well, that changes how they see themselves. And that changes everything,
In my country, poverty has a woman's face. They are the most damaged of the population, the most low in education. Myself and 13 congresswomen submitted a set of bills aimed at improving women's programs. When it comes time for the vote, the men in parliament hide in the bathroom. I open the door, the other women storm in, and we pull them out one by one. The male party members make me promise never to do this again, but the bills got passed.
The rapists stop laughing when the court orders them to pay an enormous fine and condemns them to death. Again, the news flies everywhere in my country and abroad. One day, I am told to report to a local office where I am given a check for 500,000 rupees, about $8,000, by a government minister, a woman. She explains that it is a settlement for my pain, but I think maybe it is also a bribe for my silence. I am about to hand back the check when suddenly I feel God speaking through me. I don't need the money, I need a school, I cry out. A school for girls in our village. They must learn to read, to write, to know their rights as citizens. Help me. I implore this woman who has benefited from her education. Help me to build a school. She says that I may use the money in any way that I choose. And so begins my new passion, my mission in life.
It is part of our culture in Nigeria to gather and listen to stories in our villages, tales by moonlight. So let me tell you one. A true story about a girl named Zanib. She was just 15 years old when I met her, when she first walked into our office. She's thin, comes barely up to my shoulders, and it's like the wind could just blow her away. And the words just rush out of her mouth.
My parents, they want me to marry an old man in Saudi Arabia. They betrothed me to him when I was born. I tell them, no, I want to go to university. I won't marry that man.
You must, her parents insist. And they bring her to Niger, where they put her on a transport, and they're going to send her to Saudi Arabia.
Wait, you want me to meet my husband looking like this? No, if I am going, I must get my hair done to look good for him.
And so they agree. And they leave her at the hairdresser's because, those tiny little braids that African women do, they take hours.
And that's when I escape.
And she comes to us, and we give her shelter and funds for school. And for a whole year, I tried to speak to her parents and help them understand her dreams.
They will not understand. They say I have shamed them.
And she wants to be reconciled with them. So I decide that we must give them back their respect. On the birthday of the Prophet of Islam, Zanib and I,
Hafsat and I, we traveled together to my family's compound. Many people are gathered there reading the Quran as we enter. They all stare at us, and we kneel, and Hafsat says,
on behalf of your daughter, I apologize for any shame she has brought upon your household.
my father stares, but says nothing.
Please, Zanib will return to your community when she becomes a doctor.
But he just stares. They all do. And the silence is frightening. Then suddenly,
her father reaches out and hugs her.
and hugs me. I am so happy.
And this story of Zanib has spread far and wide. It is inspiring to so many young women that they too can choose their own lives.
My life, it seems like a river with many bends. And it bends all the time, this river. I'm now Secretary General of the opposition party, seeking a seat in Parliament in the next election. Our party sign stands tall in the last stronghold of the Khmer Rouge. Landmines are still in the rice fields and forests. Malaria is widespread. I lead a team of rural women leaders to every house in 480 villages to bring our message of democracy and justice. On the trail, we listen to tales of separation, stories of hunger and of fear. When I'm on the campaign trail, I love it. Being on the motor taxi, the ox cart, crossing the river on a boat, going to the temples, talking to the farmers, visiting Muslim communities. At my age, I am discovering my own country. The opposition party can become the new government if the people of Cambodia fight for a change.
I set up a school in the field and go from house to house pleading with the parents to send their daughters to school. Every day, more little girls arrive with notebooks and pencils. They learn math and social studies, the English alphabet, Urdu, and the Quran. But we also teach them that women are equal with men, and that all human beings must be treated with respect in society.
You really accord human rights when you respect those with whom you disagree. Recently, Israeli and Palestinian women came to Northern Ireland to share insights and devise strategies for peace building. When they first arrive, I can smell and feel the tension and the fear and the anger. After 30 years of struggle in the North, I've learned that you must not drown in your own pain. You must allow your humanity enough room to recognize the pain in the other.
When you grow up with love around you, that gives you the internal freedom to share this love with others, and it gives you an internal responsibility to share this love, and it gives you the ability to share it.
In the refugee camp, I worked for the Norwegian Church Aid Office, and we were supporting a small magazine for children called The Rainbow to spread peace messages instead of violence. And then a man came to the office.
You know, this rainbow on the cover has a pigeon on the top. And these two hands or a Christian sign. This shows a political agenda. They want the people to be Christian.
I am Muslim. I work here. No one forces me to be Christian. We work for human beings who suffer a lot. That's all.
I know Islamic and Pakistani intelligence. I have their support, and I myself am in intelligence. If you don't stop this magazine, I will destroy your office. I can do anything to you and your family.
Here I am. Whatever you can do to me, then do it. My work is for needy people, and you are not needy people. So get out of here.
I see you. I will do what I can to you. You will never enter Afghanistan again.
The man keeps calling and calling every day. And it was at that time I was told, for the safety of my children, I should leave Afghanistan. And this is what I do.
Marina,
Yes?
the entrance to your apartment is very dark.
Excuse me, who are you?
I'm someone who was affected by your work.
Did I help your wife, your
It doesn't
girlfriend?
matter. I know where you live. Aren't you afraid that your son is alone in the street?
I feel that somebody has stuck a knife in my heart. He knows about my son, and it goes on for months. I don't allow Peter to answer the phone at home. I have my parents pick him up from school every day, or he goes to a friend's house, but he is never, never alone.
Aren't you afraid for your son?
I am afraid to enter the building.
Aren't you afraid? The entrance to your apartment, it is very, very dark.
Sometimes I just pray that the elevator will get to the first floor fast so I can just run in and go.
If someone were to stick a knife in your back, or better yet, a needle, you would never know who did it.
Men, very strong, come to my office looking for me. They wear suits and coats to cover their guns. We are looking for Annabella. She is on the list. We know her death date.
I received death threats. The government revokes my passport, forbids me to leave the country, and places me under house arrest.
My car is surrounded by soldiers, paratroopers, my door flung open. I'm pulled out and thrown over the car, and they're screaming, "Who am I? What am I? What am I carrying?"
The police began stalking me all the time, molestándome. Stop your car.
One of them sticks a large gun hard between my legs and calls me a fucking bitch.
President Musharraf states, since the Mukhtar Bibi case, all a woman has to do to become a millionaire is get herself raped and tell the press about it.
300 women set themselves on fire in Herat.
My advisor is tortured. They break his fingers, burn his hands, take out his eyes, and then they strangle him.
The husband pours acid on the woman's face, down the side of her neck.
The woman covers the baby with her body, but her husband keeps beating her. She asks for a divorce, and he says, "Oh, I'll kill you. And tell everyone you ran away with another man."
If she has abuse, she has no choice. You can come out of that house when you are dead.
Oh my God, I wouldn't care if I had to die in this fight. I have plenty of powerful enemies because those who fight corruption don't make too many friends. Sometimes I feel the sorrow, but I feel proud I am a congresswoman. And I feel proud that I am not dead.
At the end of the day, my father gave his life. And I think it's a very powerful message to give to people who feel disempowered too. that there is no price too high to pay for the sanctity of your voice. And my mother, because she refused to stand for injustice in Nigeria, because of that, her spirit will live on.
Now that I am far away from my home, I dream I am walking with my children in the east and most remote part of my country, where there is no road. I hear the elder women call out to me, "Farida, you do not have to wear your burqa here. In this village, we are very safe. The women are coming out to solve things." And I dream of little bits of paper falling like snow. As I reach for them, I see that they are prayers for me. So many women praying that I will not die, that I will escape what has come to harm me, to break my very heart, like the black wind before the sun. I read each prayer, and my strength comes back, and this is how we will survive.
My favorite time walking, believe it or not, is when it is snowing. Snow makes it beautiful around Red Square. This is the time I put myself together to come to some harmony with myself, because if you are not in harmony with yourself, this is a very difficult job to do. In 1993, when I started, there was only me, one crisis center. Now, there are 160 crisis centers, shelters, organizations, a whole network.
I have opened 3 schools in the Punjab province, and they are for boys as well as girls. Because boys too must learn that under Islam, under the law, women have the same rights they do. And in Merwala, where I almost killed myself, I have built a real schoolhouse with a library and 6 classrooms. The children come from many tribes, from low and high caste, girls from the Gujars, and yes, we even take boys from the Mastoi.
There is a story, we use it in training a lot. A guy is working along a river, and he suddenly sees kids drowning. And he goes into the water and he starts rescuing them. And another guy is working nearby, and he's saying, "Well, what are you doing?" And the guy says, "I'm rescuing kids, help me." And that guy gets in the water and starts teaching kids swimming. And a third guy comes along, and he turns around and starts running. And the 2 guys in the river say, "Wait, we need your help. Where are you going?" And that guy says, "I want to see who is throwing the kids in the river in the first place." We are rescuing and teaching, but we are not yet working with the cause. So it has to be deeper.
I wake up early in the morning. I take the shower and go to the beauty parlor, not for vanity's sake, chicas. My appearance is important because I must have a good face for los pueblos who are looking to me to speak for them. When I was a child, I make a promise to myself. I am going to pull out my mother, my brother, and me from the poverty and leave this little dark room. And then I am going to pull out the women of Guatemala, the silent women, and the men who have no worth in their work. I say they must not stay in silence. No more silence.
I was the first student in my own school, and now I am in the 5th grade there. And for the rest of my life, I will never have to use my thumbprint to sign my homework or anything else. Mukhtar, powerful, self-respecting, Mukhtar.
We have a Farsi proverb. We say, however high the mountain is, it must have a way on the top that you can reach it.
We shouldn't be resting. We shouldn't be thinking we've done our best. That just means our best isn't good enough. We need to really step up. Women are the greatest untapped resource in Nigeria. We are the future.
If you put equal rights at the heart of things, you have to be sure everyone is at the table. You have to look and see who isn't there, who isn't being heard, and use your power to change that. Just take one small step forward. That first step is always the massive one.
Every day I see a woman, whether she sells beer in a beer garden or sex workers or garment factory workers. They are my sisters, my friends, my teachers. When people say, how can you wake up and still do this after 25 years? And I say, you have to do it until the people who do not have a voice do.
We work to give women a voice.
Since 2006, these 7 women's stories have been updated.
Hafsat Abiola, Nigeria.
Hafsat's organization, Kudarat, continues to train thousands of women in service-oriented leadership. She is president of Women in Africa, the foremost platform on the continent for leading women into a force for sustainable development.
Musoku, Cambodia.
In 2014, Musoko was arrested and charged with insurrection and incitement of violence while doing peaceful and legal protests. After 3 years of self-imposed exile, the courts convicted her in an unfair trial and she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. If she returns to Cambodia, she will be arrested.
Annabella de Leon, Guatemala.
Annabella took the position of General Registrar of Property, and in 2019, the courts rejected a petition against her for embezzlement because of lack of evidence. She was jailed anyway, finally released, and continues her fight for women's rights.
Inez McCormick, Northern Ireland.
In 2011, Newsweek magazine named Inez as one of the women who shake the world. Shortly before her death, when asked why she did the work she did, Inez replied, "At the heart of everything, I desire to see the glint in a woman's eye who thought she was nobody, when she realized she was somebody."
Farida Azizi, Afghanistan.
In 2013, Farida went back to Herat to work with women in West Afghanistan, but her whereabouts is currently unknown. A disturbing fact: in Afghanistan in 2021, the number of girls attending secondary schools was 1.1 million. In Afghanistan in 2023, the number of girls attending secondary schools was 0.
Marina Pishlakova Parker, Russia.
Marina continues to fight to pass legislation to criminalize domestic violence and to provide more shelters, legal aid, education, and coordinated services across Russia. Her focus also now includes, especially, women's vulnerability during war and after.
Mukhtar Mai, Pakistan.
Mukhtar now operates and oversees 2 girls' schools, a shelter home for survivors of gender-based violence, and countless other resources for the women of rural Punjab. There has been an opera written about Mukhtar's life called Thumbprint.